and welcome to today's meeting of the Commissioner Student Advisory Council. Today is our February 27 meeting. For those who may not know, I'm Glypta Sangreider-Jones with the Division of Communications here at KDE, and we have a packed agenda. I will welcome and introduce to you again our Interim Commissioner of Education, Robin Fields-Kenny, who will kick off our meeting today. So, Commissioner.
Thank you so much, Glypta San. Good morning and welcome to everyone to our February meeting. It's always a pleasure to be here with our students. First, let me say thank you to our interpreters that have joined us for today. We always appreciate their service with us. And then I'm just going to talk about a few things as a welcome, and we'll get started because we do have a very packed agenda. First, I'd like you to know, if you don't already, that this week, February 26th through March 1st, is Public Schools Week in Kentucky. There is a resolution, although this is a national effort of recognition of public schools across the United States. Senator Dineen, who is a senator from Hardin and part of Jefferson County, has sponsored a resolution this year in the General Assembly to recognize Public Schools Week in Kentucky. So this is a time to celebrate the impact of public schools on students across the Commonwealth, and also to recognize and honor your teachers and administrators that work so hard in providing quality instructional services to you and teaching responsibility and civic engagement. So if you get a minute once at school, if you can say thank you to your teachers and administrators that might be in your building for all the work that they do for all of our students each and every day. The other thing that I will share with you is, of course, we are still in the General Assembly session. We have passed the halfway mark, which is always a time that we celebrate as we head into the second half of the General Assembly session. Lots of education bills, lots of them out there on all kinds of topics, from instructional things to transportation to things that would impact teachers and things that would impact students. I know this group is always very interested in what's happening in the General Assembly. We've given Brian Perry, our legislative liaison, a break from coming today only because he is over at the Annex right now talking with legislators and attending various meetings. But we will certainly invite Brian back to the next meeting so that you all can hear all the things that have happened in this session. And then finally, a quick update on the commissioner search. We have received applications. Our application period has closed, and we are gearing up for our first round of interviews, which will be next week on March 7th and 8th. So we're very excited to get to the interview portion in trying to locate the next commissioner for the Department of Education. So that's my quick update. I'm happy to answer any questions throughout the meeting. The other thing, Glypta San, if you can indulge me with an icebreaker, I always like to do icebreaker with our students. This is springtime, and springtime always makes me think of vacation. So as we go through the roll call, if you would like to respond, and let's dream big. Let's think that we have won the lottery and we can go anywhere we want to go on vacation. So money is no object. You have the means to get there. It doesn't matter where it is. Throw out as part of your response on your participation today, where is your bucket list vacation if you could go anywhere you wanted to go? So Glypta San, I'm going to turn it back over to you and we'll start the roll call.
Thank you, Commissioner. I love this icebreaker. Sounds like a fun one. So everyone, I will call roll. So please, when I call your name, please say present, and then please respond to the Commissioner's invitation there to dream big and tell us dream vacation. So I will go through quickly. Ava Benson.
Here, my dream vacation, I would go to New York City for however long it took, and I would see every single show that is on the Broadway strip while I am in New York.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Thanks. Isaac Reese Blakeman.
Here, I would probably, if I had to choose anywhere, would go to Texas. I'm a big Western fan, and so hang out with all the amenities and everything out in the West.
Definitely fun. Owen Borden. Not hearing Owen yet. Cameron Breyer.
Here, I'd like to go to California to the beach.
Hopefully not rainy weather like today. Thanks, Cameron. Owen Graham Cody.
Here, I guess my dream vacation would be to go to Greece, like to the island of Rhodes or some of the islands there in the Aegean Sea. All the history there is just amazing to me.
Thank you. Hunter Combs. Not hearing Hunter. Jude Dalla. Justin Dunning. Rima Dutt.
Here, and I would say my dream vacation would probably be like Barcelona in Spain.
Manas Garla.
Here, and I'd say my dream vacation would be to somewhere in Central America.
I like that one. Nicholas Hazlett.
Present. I would probably pick Taiwan. A friend of mine is from Taiwan, so I'd like to go there, visit with her family, and kind of just see how the other half lives.
Thanks, Nicholas. Onette Irakiza. Trey Jackson. Peter Jefferson. Okay.
Here.
Sure. Oh, Peter, great.
Sorry, my computer isn't moving very quickly. I think I would want to go to Yosemite and hike and camp there.
Shraman Carr.
Here, and I'd like to go to Italy.
A fun one. Vijay Karthikeyan. Seth Langford.
Here, my dream vacation is Yellowstone National Park.
All right, another park. I like it. Danica Love.
Here, my dream vacation would probably be Italy.
I like it. Thank you. Gabriella McAdams.
Here, and my dream vacation would go to Scotland to see all of the old architecture and castles.
Awesome. That sounds fun too. All these fun ideas. Constance Martin. Anopa Musoni. Anopa, are you on? I thought I saw you. All right. RJ Osborne. Tanvi Rakesh.
Here, and my dream vacation would probably be Hawaii.
Another great fun. All these lovely ideas. Daniel Ratley.
Here, my dream vacation would probably be Paris, France.
Jocelyn Reddick.
Here, and my dream vacation would also be Greece.
Thank you. Amy Roblero Perez. Caleb Robinson. Sophia Staples. Ian Swinson. Sarah Umbacher.
I'm here, and my dream vacation would probably be to travel to Switzerland.
Switzerland, all right. Austin Eric Vidito will be joining us in just a few more minutes. It's in a note. Carly Watts.
Here, and my dream vacation would probably be Bali.
Bentley White.
Hi, I'm here, and my dream vacation would probably, well, two things really. I would probably go like Mediterranean, like coastal, just like island hopping, and then I would like just spend 6 months going through the whole Schengen area. Just let the visa expire.
You thought about that. Aliete Llanos Medina.
Here, my dream vacation will be to go to Cuba. I was born there, but I have never been able to actually explore the island. and I have many beautiful places. I would love to go with time.
Yeah, definitely. India Young. And lastly, Joshua Zizek.
Here, my dream vacation would probably be to go to Hawaii.
All right. Lots of ideas. And Commissioner, that concludes our roll call. And are you going to share a dream vacation?
I actually put in the chat that I have a bucket list trip planned for this summer. I'm headed to Alaska. This was a fun exercise. Thanks everyone for participating. You've given me great ideas for my next vacation.
I agree with that. Lots of ideas and several all across the globe, it sounded like. All right, we will move now into our approval of the summary from our last meeting. You all received by email the summary notes from the January 23rd, 2024 meeting. So I will, is there a motion to approve those minutes that were distributed? I will need someone to say their name when you say a motion to approve.
A motion to approve. Aliette Yanes Medina.
Thank you, Aliette. And is there a second to approve the minutes that were emailed?
Second. Cody.
I heard Owen Cody first. Thank you. Second. So at this time, we'll do a voice vote. So everyone say aye, or you can mark in the chat if you wish. Does motion to approve the minutes that were distributed? So just everyone, if you are in agreement, say yes or mark in the chat.
Yes, good.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Hear the voices. And Justin, I see your note. So welcome, Justin, joining us on the call. And are there any opposed or to the motion on the floor? And if there are no, then the motion to approve the minutes passes. And so we'll move into our next agenda item. So thanks, everyone. And Justin, I've got marked you as attending. Now we will pivot and turn over to Dr. Damian Sweeney, who will be joining us this morning. Dr. Sweeney is the director of the Division of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging here at KDE in the Office of Teaching and Learning.
Great. Good morning. It's good to be with everybody. I've got a few things planned for us today. So the first thing that we're going to do is just do some deep breathing. And I know it's easy not to do it with me, but I promise if you join me in this deep breathing exercise, it will help you. So all we're going to do is I'm going to say breathe in, and you're just going to take a deep breath in, and you're going to hold that for 4 seconds, and I'll count. And then I'll say deep breath out, and you're going to breathe out for 4 seconds. All right, so try it with me. Let's take a deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a deep breath out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 more. Let's take a deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a deep breath out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last one. Deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a deep breath out. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so hopefully you can see just with a very small exercise of deep breathing, we can kind of ground ourselves and be a little bit more present. So for our next activity, I want to make sure that we are really affirming who we are. Okay, so this is called positive affirmations, and just think about one thing to celebrate regarding how you've been showing up in the world or at school lately, and what makes you proud of yourself. You can either come off mute or put it in the chat box, but we want to know what makes you really proud of how you've been showing up in the world or at school lately. I'll model. One thing that used to be really hard for me is when people just were really not friendly, and I couldn't understand why. And I would sometimes try everything in my power to get them to like me or to be closer. And sometimes I sacrificed who I was in order to allow that to happen, allow that person to like me. And what I am proud of lately is that I've been showing up authentically as I am. Take me or leave me, but showing up authentically it's kind of been my superpower lately, something I'm really proud of. So that's me. All right, so who can share with us, what are you proud of in terms of the way that you've been kind of showing up in the world or at school lately? And let's celebrate you.
I am proud of myself for sort of drowning out the social noise and being able to focus on schoolwork lately.
Yeah, that is hard, but good for you. Thank you for sharing.
I could share my sister is applying for the Gatton Academy, and I've been doing, I think, a good job in supporting her and helping her, just from the outside, supporting her ambition for.
Yeah, I've been to Gatton. It's awesome. So, wow, how awesome it is for her brother to be supporting her in that endeavor. That's great. I see. I'm proud of my efforts to stay on schedule on my projects this past week. Cameron says, I'm proud of myself for pushing through the end of my senior year and continue to work hard in classes. I used to be a high school English teacher, a special education teacher, and a high school counselor. And it was always for those seniors after that holiday break, that's when you started to see the senior slides. So I'm proud of you for continuing to push through. What else? What are some other things that you're proud of in terms of the way that you've been showing up? These positive affirmations are really important for us to, really for ourselves, right? Reminding ourselves of how we're showing up, how we're being authentic, how we're staying encouraged is really important. So who else can share?
Hi, I've been proud of myself because I've been able to balance my personal life and my student life. It's been really hard, but now I'm sleeping a little more, and I'm just really happy that I'm being able to change those bad habits that I had.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. So before we move on, I want to acknowledge the folks that are in the chat box. I'm proud of my efforts to effectively lead my softball team as a senior. Way to go. I'm proud of trying new things like soccer. I'm a soccer player. I played at Transylvania University down the road and a soccer coach. So I love hearing that. We have a lacrosse team captain. Proud of myself for continuing my senior year strong while still finding time to help my sister with her schoolwork. That's awesome, and daily struggles. I'm proud that I've been able to focus on applying for scholarships and preparing for college interviews. Y'all, that is hard, and that's a lot of pressure, so way to go on that. And then I'm proud of myself for being able to balance my classes and extracurriculars and stay consistent. Lastly, I'm proud of being able to keep a level head with all the after high school decisions coming up, for sure. So as Dr. Jones mentioned, Dr. Grider-Jones mentioned, I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. I want to talk to you about those last two things, inclusion and belonging, real quick. Just so you know, and just so we're on the same page, when we talk about inclusion, it's being really intentional about creating an environment that fosters mutually respectful relationships where each student, regardless of their background, is welcome, supported, and valued as fully participating members of society. The ultimate goal of my work is to enhance a sense of belonging. So I want to make sure that everybody feels included. The ultimate goal is to enhance a sense of belonging. As a matter of fact, our division's vision is that all students and educators in Kentucky will feel a sense of belonging. So just to be on the same page for that, belonging just means the degree to which learners believe, experience, and feel that they are accepted by adults and peers, as well as respected as a valued contributor in their learning and social environment. So now that we are on the same page with inclusion and belonging, I want to ask you a quick question. What have adults at your school done to make you feel included or as if you belong? So this is a time to celebrate the adults in your school. What have they done to help make you feel included or as if you belong? You can come off mute and use your mic or put it in the chat box.
I'll start. This is Justin. My school recently just implemented the Sources of Strength program, which is amazing. And
It is
so
amazing.
not only does it make me feel, like I belong, but it's brought in a lot of kids from around the school from different social areas. And I think even though I'm a senior and I'm going to be graduating and won't get to see it through, this is the first year, but it's done a lot of really cool stuff already and brought together a lot of different students within the school.
Thanks for sharing, Justin. Where do you go to school?
I go to Lyon County in Western
Okay.
Kentucky.
Sweet. Awesome. All right. Thank you for sharing. Who else? What have adults done to make you feel included or as if you belong?
I can talk a little bit about my social studies teacher. I go to Henry Clay High School in Fayette County, and at the beginning of class every day, our teacher just asks us, what's going on, what kind of sporting events are this evening, how did the sporting events go the other day, what's happening in other classes. Just a couple of minutes that gives us a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah,
It makes us feel a lot more welcome.
Right. So what I hear you say is you have a teacher that sees you for who you are beyond just as a student. They want to know what else is important in your life. All right, awesome. Let me hear some from a few others. While you're thinking, I also want to know what students do at your school to make you feel included or make others feel included or like they belong. So let me know, either adults or students. What do they do to make other folks feel included or as if they belong?
Well, since there's no talking, this is Kevin Daly. I'm the Kentucky Teacher of the Year. I'll go. At our school, I teach in a middle school, and this whole year has been one of those efforts to try to increase a sense of belonging. We have implemented a house system similar to the Ron Clark Academy.
Yes, yes.
Which for the students who maybe don't have a school or haven't heard of that, it's essentially think like Hogwarts houses, where every student is divided into a house. And keep in mind, I know y'all are two cool high schoolers. This is middle school. So they all get put into a house and they compete in different games and different activities. But what's really cool is that every 6th grader, 7th grader, and 8th grader is in a combined house. And when we have meetings, 6th graders can get mentorship and support from 8th graders and 7th graders. And those 8th and 7th graders can get leadership opportunities that are a little more organic by helping the 6th graders out. So the goal is that every single staff member, teacher, student, even our bus drivers are part of our houses. They all have a place in our school and they all can connect with someone. So for me, that's been a really big change this year and it's been really cool.
Yeah, Kevin, thank you for sharing. Just so you know, your name came up in our team's meeting yesterday, and I said, I really want to meet him. So I hope that we get a chance to talk here soon. Thank you for sharing that. I want to acknowledge some things that are in the chat box. We have some that say, so efforts made by my school for me to express my African culture in the Multicultural Fair African Fashion Show. That's awesome. Always gave me the option to voice my opinion where appropriate in the classroom. At my high school, the administration tries hard to make sure every student is involved and has a place to be. It could be clubs, sports, or just bonding with teachers. I believe the adults within my school support me and all students by treating us as equals with wellness, compassion, and understanding. Folks show that they care, not just about our schoolwork or academics, but also about our personal lives and so much more. All right, so we need to talk about youth mental health. So we know that So we've done a few things already. We've done some deep breathing exercises. We've talked about positive affirmations, and we've talked about inclusion and belonging and how important that is. But I also need to share with you just kind of like what's going on in the state of Kentucky right now. So for our elementary schools, 8% of our elementary students, 15% of our middle school students, and 22% of our Kentucky high school students either disagree or strongly disagree with the statement, I feel like I'm part of my school. All right, so one thing that we also want to know is what we can do either at KDE or even as a student advisory to allow more kids to feel like they're part of their school. So what are some messages that we can remind our school systems to prioritize in order to allow kids to feel like they're part of their school? I want to tell you about just a few other things. 22% of our elementary students, 52% of our middle school students, and 51% of our high school students either disagree or strongly disagree with the statement, students from this school respect each other's differences, right? So making sure that we are understanding of each other's differences, acknowledging each other's differences, respectful of those differences is something that's going to be really important to making students feel included, making us all feel included and like we belong. And right now that seems to be a struggle in our state. So think about, again, what can we at KDE continue to do or start to do? And then perhaps what can we as a student advisory think about doing in order to help students and other people respect each other's differences. Finally, in terms of bullying, 51% of Kentucky high school students and 62% of middle school students in Kentucky disagree or strongly disagree with the statement that bullying is not a problem for this school. Right, so we know that bullying is prevalent and we know that it's got detrimental effects to all involved, even the bully, even the victim, even the bystanders. So we need to make sure that we're putting things in place to prevent bullying and to make more kids aware of those detrimental effects. So if you have any responses to any of those things, whether it's kids not feeling like they're part of their school, kids not feeling like their differences or unique identities are respected, or bullying, and you have any suggestions, please put that in the chat box or come off mute. I know that these are three things that really stand out to many of you, and many of our kids are thinking about these things all day, every day. So finding ways to really help and support kids and adults, quite honestly, is really, really important. It's at the top of my list. So if you have any suggestions, like I said, feel free to come off mute or put in the chat box. All right, Seth says it can be easy to sort ourselves into groups and not allow ourselves to mix with the student body. I think the optimal solution would be to increase comfort levels with talking to each other openly. Yeah, absolutely. So making sure that you're kind of mixing it up and that we're not just kind of staying in silos or small groups, but everybody has a chance to get to know one another. Okay, I think I saw a hand. I can't see the name.
Yeah,
Dr.
I have my hand raised.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, going off of Seth, one thing that I've always said is like, if I were a teacher, I would make sure that in my classroom, I make sure that students sit at different tables, like maybe not every day, but they're like joining different groups, people that they wouldn't naturally be with. Because like I feel like when you interact with somebody and you wouldn't usually interact with them, you learn a lot of things about them, and you realize that like we're all human, like you have similarities to them, and yeah, like you may do different things, believe in different things, but you can still get along at the end of the day. So I think, like Seth said, putting students in like situations where they're interacting with each other when they usually wouldn't would be beneficial.
Yeah, I love that. So kind of gone are the days, from what I'm hearing, gone are the days of just like those straight rows of seats. Put each other in small groups, mix up those small groups, and perhaps do something like Interim Commissioner Kenny did today with a 5-minute icebreaker that allows us to kind of get talking with one another and learn from one another. And then once we're able to do that, we begin to respect each other's differences. I love that. Any other thoughts or ideas?
I think I can really speak to the issues within middle school and high school. That's really when students start to find themselves and start to figure out what they believe politically and really who they are in society. But those new differences and new forthcomings aren't really addressed. And I feel like if the adults in our schools would sit down and talk to students about, hey, you're going to start having a lot more different beliefs than your peers, and just really address that what we're going through, it's not a new thing. Everyone goes through it, and really offer support for those new ideas that we are starting to develop at these ages.
Yeah, and make sure that we're teaching things like conflict resolution, being able to respect other people's opinions, even when those opinions differ from ours. I love that. I see in the chat box, as the population of refugees increases in our Commonwealth, it is important for school districts to have resources to make transitions from different countries easier and make sure they have access to all the same resources available to their peers. I love that. That's great. Okay, I did see Cody said the administrators and the members of the African American Leadership Club at my school organized a Black History program this past week. I participated in the program playing keyboards and accompanying other musicians on Lift Every Voice and Sing and other socially conscious music. This opportunity was beneficial to the student body and recognizing the unique artistic contributions of African Americans in our society. Love that. That sounds amazing. I want to go next time. Invite me. I love music and I would love to see you playing the keys. All right, anybody else? Oh, I do see Justin's comment. I wish small schools had more funding to hire support staff. My high school, we never say guidance counselor, so we always say school counselor. Is one person for 300 students. She also has to act as an assistant principal. If she could truly focus on student guidance and mental health rather than schedules and discipline, it would make a world of difference. Yeah. Yes, I've been working with school counselors for the last 5 years, actually, to be really intentional about getting into classrooms, talking about mental health to whole groups of students, and then working on those issues with small groups and even with individuals as well. So totally agree. Our school counselors are heroes and sheroes, and we've got to find ways to support them and allow them to do their jobs. All right, I think we have time for one more comment. And I see somebody's got their hand raised.
Sorry, it's me again. But
yeah.
What Anoba said, like, really opened my eyes to something else that I could have commented about. There's also a big population of refugees in our county, and I feel like one thing that happens is that they always get bullied or like they're looked down upon because of like the things that they don't know about our culture and our society. Like, for example, they don't know that like when you wake up in the morning you should put deodorant on, or you need to brush your teeth regularly, or this and that. They don't know how to use their laundry machines because like they're not used to any of that. And so my parents like work a lot with refugees and trying to make their transition easier. But it's just sad to see that like they get bullied in their schools for things that they don't know that they should be doing. So I don't really know how we could address that. Maybe having like sanitary workshops or like telling them the things, like the most important things that they should know when they move here.
Yeah, and I think it's just, being willing to be a friend. I was at a high school the other day, and anytime I go to a school, the first thing that I do, especially if it's lunchtime, is look and see who's sitting by themselves. If there's a cafeteria and I see students sitting by themselves, my first wondering in my own mind is, are they doing that because they want to, or are they doing that because they don't have a friend or a social group? So I think we can take it upon ourselves, certainly as leaders in this state, the leaders in the state that you are, if you see somebody that needs a friend, that may not know certain things, that may not have people, just go up to them, introduce yourself, and be the friend that you would want if you were in their shoes. All right, thank you so much for your time today. I loved hearing from you. I do want to remind you that, positive affirmations are important. Reminding yourself that you are enough is important. Do that daily, and you're going to show up in this world more authentically as who you are. Take those deep breaths. if things become hard or the pressure starts to get to you, take those deep breaths and start really trying to control that breathing. It's going to help dysregulate some of the, it's going to help regulate some of your breathing and some of your high emotions. And then look out for each other. Remember, we have a lot of kids in Kentucky that just don't feel like they're part of their school, that don't feel like their differences are respected and feel bullied, right? So be that person that you would want to be if you showed up, if you were in their shoes. You all, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Dr. Sweeney, and everyone for your participation in that our Mindful Minute activity. I will now pivot and introduce to the group Dr. Meredith Brewer. She is the Executive Director of Education Policy and will be providing an update as it relates to the Kentucky Board of Education.
Thanks, Dr. Greider-Jones. Hi, everyone. Happy to be back with you today. I always enjoy the opportunity to talk with the Student Advisory Council. So I wanted to share an update about the board's most recent meeting, and then actually bring to you a request on behalf of the board. And hopefully some of you will be willing to take on that task that I will outline at the end of the presentation. So if we could go to the next slide. So the board's regular meeting was held on February 7th at the 300 building in Frankfort. This was a really celebratory meeting, which was really a welcome sort of change from some of our meeting paces that tend to be full of a lot of intense action items. At this meeting, we were able to have a lot of really exciting updates, including from Kevin Daly, who you heard from earlier, our 2024 Teacher of the Year. He was able to share with the board about his project and his intentions for his time spent on sabbatical at the department. We also heard from Advance Kentucky. That is an outstanding partnership that we have through the Office of Teaching and Learning to support mathematics education across the state. So they were able to share with us about access to algebra and how that course actually opens so many doors for students, and how just by letting schools and districts know that providing that opportunity can really create opportunities for students to explore math in ways that they may not otherwise, which of course we know leads into some amazing opportunities in the STEM space. We also heard from Brian about the legislative session that Commissioner Kinney referenced. Obviously, our board members are very interested in the budget conversations. We were able to provide an update to them about their additional budget requests, the items that they had prioritized to have additional funding to support our public schools. And then the board did have a few action items on this agenda, which included approval of local district tax rates. Okay, next slide, please. As Commissioner Kinney mentioned, we are well into the search for the new permanent commissioner. The application window actually closed on February 16th. As part of our search process, the board did issue a feedback survey opportunity. We had 3 separate surveys, one that we shared with members of the General Assembly, one that was particularly tailored to educators and administrators, and then one that was for general education stakeholders. So we invited citizens across the Commonwealth to provide input on the characteristics that they were looking for in the next commissioner. And as Commissioner Kinney mentioned, interviews will be held throughout March with a hope that the board can name the new commissioner by the end of March. Next slide, please. During the February meeting, we were able to celebrate Hopkins County Schools. They were named the winner of the Kevin C. Brown Strategic Priority Award. This award, the award content and criteria actually changes each year. The board identifies a priority area, and with that priority area, we advertise and ask for people to nominate. groups or schools or individuals who would satisfy that criteria. And this year's priority was actually supporting implementation of Portrait of a Learner. And so Hopkins County Schools is doing amazing work in that space. We were excited to celebrate them, and a fun connection. One of our board members, Dr. Lee Todd, actually is a former resident of Hopkins County and was able to connect with the members of the staff that came in person for that award ceremony. Next slide, please. A really exciting conclusion to our meeting was a CTE student showcase. So February is CTE month, if you were unaware of that, and it's a time for us to celebrate career and technical education opportunities. It's actually a national celebration, but in Kentucky, we certainly enjoy February and celebrating CTE in a lot of different ways. Something that we did this year was invite students from across the Commonwealth to come and speak about their CTE programs. I'm sure many of you partake in CTE courses at your school and can speak to how valuable they really are. As always, the students were so impressive. You could see how passionate they were about the work that they were sharing, so well spoken. The board members, of course, loved interacting with the students. And you can see we got some great photos of them just really enjoying the opportunity to connect with students about work of great interest to them. Next slide, please. Okay, looking ahead, the board will meet in early April, April 9th and 10th, back in Frankfort. As always, our meetings are live streamed, or members of the public are welcome to come in person and watch the board meeting. We have a public comment opportunity at every board meeting where citizens can come and address the board. We also have an opportunity for public comment via email. So the board is certainly open to engaging in any way that people so choose. So I will mention that the April meeting, unlike the February meeting, will be very, very full of action items and a lot of regulations that will be coming before the board. So those of you who are particularly interested in sort of the regulatory authority of the board, that would be one to tune into, because you'll have opportunity to see lots of different regulations that will be coming before the board. All right, next slide, please. Okay, here's the big ask. So I'm sure you are all aware that Kentucky is one of a few states that have a student member on the State Board of Education, and it's something that we are very proud of. We have a non-voting student and a non-voting teacher, which really makes us unique. And the board has said repeatedly how impactful it has been to have that student and teacher to provide their perspective, to sort of speak to the potential implications of decisions that they make. And so it really is an important role on the board. So per statute, the student and teacher change every year. They serve a one-year term. And the location of that non-voting student and non-voting teacher changes, and it's actually by congressional district. And so it sort of rotates through. So this year, the eligible students reside in the 6th congressional district, and you can see that highlighted on the map in green. And the eligible teachers need to reside in the 2nd congressional district, which is highlighted in blue. Applications are due March 8th. If we could go to the next slide, here's where I'm going to make a pitch for you to, if you know anyone that lives in the 6th congressional district, please encourage them to apply. But why would they want to be a member on the board? I wish that Jude or RJ was here. They could speak to their own experience, but I'll have to do that on their behalf. So being a student member gives you incredible experience and insight into ed policy. You all know I've spoken with you before that education policy is an area of great interest to me, but we want to provide opportunities for our students to engage with the policy landscape in Kentucky. It'll also help you become more familiar with state laws, policies, and administrative regulations that relate to education. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and so that familiarity, I think, really provides a helpful context as a student. It'll also help you think about where Kentucky fits in nationally. We have a lot to celebrate in Kentucky, but we do look to other states to learn from what they're doing. And so it helps to sort of see how we're situated nationally. It'll also help give you the opportunity to make a difference in Kentucky education policy. I can think of numerous times when the board has called on the student member to provide that perspective, and it really has informed their decision. So even though it is a non-voting position, you still have great influence on the board and the actions that they take. You also get to have a member as your mentor, which I can brag on our board members here for a minute. They are some of the most prolific educators. They have had a variety of professional experiences, from superintendent, administrator, member of the U.S. Department of Education, a college president. So we have a lot of expertise on our board. And so one of those members will serve as a mentor to our student. And it also gives you a chance to think about your future career. Again, interacting with a lot of educators, but there are a lot of different career opportunities outside of even being in the education space that you would have an opportunity to learn about as serving on a student, as the student member. So if you reside in the 6th Congressional District and are currently a sophomore, you are eligible to apply. However, I know many of you are older than that, so there are some stipulations. As I said, you have to reside in the 6th Congressional District, and you do need to be a current sophomore. Per statute, the student needs to be a junior when they start their term on July 1, so a current sophomore. So request number 1, please try to recruit some applicants for this position. You can see photos of our current and former student members. And I think if they were here, they would say it is worth the time it takes to apply. All right, next slide. Thank you. So as part of the Student Advisory Council, you all have a really important role in deciding who will fill that student position. So in regulation, so there's a statute that sort of outlines how the members, where they will be located, and that we will have a member, but actually the board has a regulation that outlines how the student and the teacher will be selected. And as part of that regulation, the Student Advisory Council actually gets to pick who the finalists are that go to the board. So here's sort of the time requirement and role that you will play. So on March 8th, when the application window closes, I have 3 days to send to the members of the Student Advisory Council Special Committee all of the applications. We will carefully go through and redact them so that we can do our best to make them as anonymous as possible, to hopefully make it so that you can do a review without having any concern about knowing who the applicants are. And then I will also provide a rubric. Every member of the Student Advisory Council Special Committee will review the applications and, using the rubric, score them, and that'll be on your own time. We normally have between 8 and 12 applications, so that's not too much time, but certainly we want you to do a thorough review. So you'll score those independently. I will also send out to the committee a poll to identify a time when you're available to meet. So the committee will meet just one time virtually, and you will go through the deliberation of how you scored the different applications compared to your peers, and then work together to bring forward to the board 3 recommendations for them to consider for the future student member. So I will pause for a moment because I do know that on the call right now, we have some people who served on the special committee last year. So if any of them would like to speak to just how much fun it is, because this is really a fun meeting. We get, they all take it very seriously, and we've had some very good debates about selecting the student member. So if anyone who's on the call who served last year wants to speak to this opportunity and why it's worth the time it takes to participate.
I've served before.
Yes.
I did it last year. The applications aren't bad. KDE asks some really good questions, so you feel like you get to know the person more than, you're not just looking at what they've done. They get to write an essay, and so you kind of get to get an insight about who they are. And then the selection meeting is just a ton of fun. You get to get on there, and you kind of have your top 3 choices written down beside you, and so you're at least fighting for your number 1 to be in the selection, but you obviously want your choices, and so you definitely get to have a lot of good debate with everybody else, and it's a good time.
Thanks, Justin. So Hunter put in the chat a similar sentiment. It really is fun. I mostly wait in the wings and address any questions, and the students just sort of debate. It can get to be that people have kind of their top 3, and they're going to really defend them and fight for them, which is a really exciting part, because you can see just how amazing our students are in Kentucky, that we have so many that would be an amazing addition to the board. So we do ultimately have to have just one, but I can say from the past few years of reviewing these applications that we have just amazing students here in Kentucky, and all of our applicants would have done an amazing job. So here's the ask. If you would like to serve on the special committee, keeping in mind that likely we'll meet kind of the second week of March. So I'll get those applications to you, and then we'll confirm a time. So, the second, third week of March. I need to know who wants to serve so that I can get you those applications and we can confirm a meeting time. So Dr. Greider-Jones can collect names of people who are interested. We'll also send an email out to all the members, some who were unable to join today, but we do need to know before that March 8th deadline if you would like to serve, so that we can get you all the information that you need. So that is my overview of the board's most recent meeting. I always love talking with you all. Happy to answer any questions that anyone might have, or feel free to reach out to me by email. All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, you.
Thanks, Dr. Brewer. I will include the request if you'd like to serve on the SAC special committee that Dr. Brewer just discussed. Please mark that in today's exit slip, which you will receive by email. So I like to see, I'm seeing comments in the chat. Also, just be sure to mark in the exit slip, and I'll get that information over to Dr. Brewer. So thank you, Dr. Brewer, for the update about the board. And we will now, I'd now like to introduce to you Blake Connie from the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support, who will be sharing highlights from the annual Safe School Statistical Report. And welcome, Blake, to the Commissioner Student Advisory Council.
Thanks, everybody. It really is an honor to be here. School data is part of my job here at the department, but really I'm in the Safe Schools branch, so I work to support students' mental health through bullying prevention, suicide prevention, and then a small portion of my position is focusing on school data overall to make sure it's a better experience for you, the students, and our families that are connected to schools. I will start moving through. There are a lot of slides. I will probably skip through some of them today because they aren't totally pertinent, and to make up for time and to allow for you all at the end to interact with me. So the data that we get, it comes from Infinite Campus, and school administrators typically enter that throughout the school year. It actually belongs to school districts until they hand it over to us in October, and it comes out in our Safe Schools report. You can go to the next slide. So KRS, so Kentucky Revised Statute, requires us to do certain things with this report. We collect the data through Infinite Campus, which you all are familiar with, but that's where all referrals or behavior referrals go into. We have to report on certain topics, and so like the discipline responses that we have to include in our report are in school or in district removal. So like ISS would be in school removal. In district removal is something we added in the last few years, and that would be if you sent a student to like an alternate an alternative school for a short period of time. So maybe for a couple of days, they're removed from the building, but they're still somewhere in the district. They're not at home. Any type of out-of-school suspension, expulsion, and expulsion can include with services or without services. With services means the school district still provides an education, typically through online. Without services, it means that the student does not get any educational services that year. And that's very rare. We'll see some numbers of that in just a few minutes. And then we also have to report on corporal punishment, which corporal punishment, again, is using physical punishment for some type of infraction. And as a whole, there are just a few counties in Kentucky that still use corporal punishment, although in the last year, while it's still allowed by state law, all those districts at this point have committed to not using corporal punishment in the schools. And there were just, I think, 5 incidents of corporal punishment last year. Any behavior that involves assault, violence, weapons of any type, tobacco, drugs, alcohol, or bullying, harassment have to be included in this report. And then the KRS also stipulates that we have to break the data down by sex, by race or ethnicity, by grade level, and socioeconomic status. We also have a little bit of breakdown by students with and without IEPs, as well as the location that the behavior happens in the school. So that's the things we have to include. There's a lot of variability there, and we'll go to the next slide. So this is most of the data we have it's the past 5 years. So most of the slides we're going to look at will include 5 years of data. For the purpose of today, we're going to mostly focus on 22-23. So that's last year's data, because at that, again, it does not belong to, it's not public until the schools release it from the previous school year. And so last year, there were 634,000 students enrolled in Kentucky public schools. So preschool through high school, we had 634,000 students. Of that, 92,000, so that, column all the way to the right there, 92,000 individual or unique students had one or more referral. So that's about 14% of all students in the state. So that's anywhere from, tardy to class to something much more substantial. Okay, next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there are certain things that we have to report in this the statistical report. However, 80% of the infractions that happen in a school are typically not considered safe schools infractions. So they're not part of the safe schools data. However, they still will show up in various ways. But I want to highlight this so that kind of like the big events or the big things are the ones that are required. So assault, weapons, drugs, alcohol, bullying, harassment. Those account for about 20% of all referrals in Infinite Campus last year. And about 80% of those infractions entered into Infinite Campus, I will say I'm gonna call them minor, and they still don't always feel that way. The most common things that are not showing up at an individual level are, disrespect or defiance is one of the highest categories we see that's not considered a safe schools item. Skipping class is also one of the highest. So those are the disrespect, defiance, and skipping class make up a huge percentage of that 223,000 referrals. All right, next slide, please. So as I mentioned, it has to be broken down by certain subgroups, and students' socioeconomic status is one of the subgroups that we look at. And so for this, this graph shows us that students that qualify for free or reduced lunch last year were 66,000 of those 92,000 students with referrals, and 26,000 were students that qualify for paid lunch, so on a higher socioeconomic plane. For me, I wanted to break that down a little bit more specifically, and so I looked at the total number of referrals, because again, this graph just shows individual students, but I wanted the total number of referrals. And so students that get free or reduced lunch made up 76.3% of all referrals in Infinite Campus last year. but they only make up 59.6% of the student population. Okay, so that's what we look at. That's kind of a disproportionality. So we're looking at that and saying, okay, there's a difference there. And remember, data does not show cause. Okay, it just shows what is. And so at the end of this conversation, we're going to have an opportunity for you all to give some input and reflect. But I will highlight a few things as we go that stood out to me personally. All right, next slide, please. So this is this is all individual students broken down by that have at least one referral, broken down by race or ethnicity. That very bottom line is the most current data. So each of those sections or each race group has four bars. 2020, we did not have data because we were homebound that year, but we see a trend that has upheld for the last 5 years. And the thing that I added at the bottom, just like I did with socioeconomic status, is that students accounted for 31 or almost 32% of all behavior events last year. However, they only make up 10.8% of our student population. Okay, so once again, disproportionality, and there's a discrepancy there that has been going on for too long, and again, the data supports that for the last 5 years. Next slide, please. So this graph is the students who experience out-of-school suspension. So this is all out-of-school suspensions that were assigned last year. This does not show the number of days. It just shows the number of assignments of out-of-school suspension. And so I'll let you all look at that. Again, we see, I would say, disproportionality between Black students and all other race groups. Next slide, please. So I'm going to kind of cruise through some of these here because it gets a little into the weeds, but I will say that we see pretty much across all different types of behavior that we're going to look at, we see kind of those same trends, which is important to remember. This is a count of resolutions. So again, after the behavior takes place, is entered into Infinite Campus, then it's up to typically the administrator of the school to assign a resolution, or commonly we would say a punishment. So the count of resolutions last year, we had in-school or in-district removal were the most prevalent, out-of-school suspension. So 75,000 times we used out-of-school suspension last year, and that does not include the number of days. So that's just looking at the number of times. So that could be a 1-day suspension. It could be up to a 10-day suspension. And so that's a lot of school days that students are missing. And as a former administrator, when a student comes back off suspension, they're further behind. They're frustrated because they're far behind. And when people are frustrated, their behavior isn't always their best. And so it can be a compounding issue when students miss school. So we had 263 students expelled with services. So again, those students were provided an education either outside of the school day or virtually. Expelled without services, we had 30 last year. And then last year we had 5 counts of corporal punishment. So we had a total of 284,000 of these events. I will say the other things that don't show up in this report would be like detention or conferences or any other type of resolution or punishment that does not fit one of these categories. But again, these are the ones that we are required to report on. Next slide, please. Again, we have to break it down by sex. So looking at female versus males last year, the resolutions or the punishments that were assigned, across the board, it is almost exactly twice as many resolutions for each category. So if we look at students, female students who received in-school or in-district removal, it was 69,000, and male students were 139,000. So almost twice. Out-of-school suspension, 25,000 versus 50,000. exactly twice. Expelled with services, without services, and corporal punishment. We see that same trend. So male students were approximately twice as likely to receive a resolution than female. Next slide, please. This is that same graph, but broken down by just looking at in-school or in-district removals based on race, ethnicity. I said the same thing earlier, but Black students who make up 32% of students receiving in-school or in-district removals, again, while only making up 10% of our student population. Next slide, please. These are students that are expelled, broken down by race, ethnicity. It's a very small number, but I'll let you just look at that graph. This is more fitting to our student population group, our population of student groups. So nothing here stands out. But again, anytime we're just expelling a student, it's a big deal. Next slide, please. This is expelled without services. Nothing to, it's very, very small numbers. So next slide, please. So this is based on locations of the event that it happened. So if something happened and somebody entered that data into Infinite Campus as a referral, they have to mark where the location of where that took place. So as you would expect, the number one, where do students spend the most time? In our classrooms. So that's by far where we see the most referrals taking place. However, in the last few years, we've seen a huge increase in hallway or stairwell incidents and in the restrooms. So I put a little arrow next to those three categories because you can really see, especially hallway and restrooms in the last few years, the increase. And I have a theory for that. What do we see taking place in hallways and restrooms that is a fairly new phenomenon in the last 5 years? Would be vaping or electronic vaping devices. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Next slide, please. This is all events of assault and violence broken down by race or ethnicity. Again, we see disproportionate numbers of some of the subgroups, particularly students who identify as Black. Next one, please. This is assault and violence broken down by sex. So again, males much more likely to be involved than females, but any type of assault and violence in school is unacceptable. But we have, over the last 5 years, we have seen an increase. Last year was 6,800 events. Next one, please. Next slide. Oh, sorry, you did. All right, this is by grade level. So assault and violence by grade level. PS, all the way to the left, is preschool. All the way to the right, there's grade 14. Grade 14 are students that qualify for special education services that can have services in schools up to the age of 21. But for the most part, we're looking at students, preschool through 12th grade. And we see all grade levels have experienced some type of assault or violence in those grade levels. But we see, and most of the data we look at, we'll really see an uptick in middle school and early high school. So like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, 9th and 10th, and things kind of settle down after that. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so for me, this is the assault and violence broken down by social and economic status. We see students who qualify for free or reduced lunch, who make up 77% of behaviors in this category, again, while only making up 59% of our student population. So definitely something that stands out. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is students that are in possession of a gun, a knife, any weapon that qualifies, including nunchucks. So any weapon that fits the criteria of being considered a weapon in school, broken down by sex. So again, males are much more likely than females to have a referral for one of these things. All right, next slide, please. So actually, I want to say this, you can keep it here, but there were 1,300 events last year of a gun or other deadly weapon, which is a big deal. So over 1,000 times, students were caught, and I'm gonna use that term, they were caught with one of these weapons. You know, this does not take into account anyone that was not caught or written up for any of these, one of these events. Again, free and reduced lunch are much more likely to have a discipline referral for assault or with a deadly weapon than a student that qualifies for paid lunch. Next slide, please. Drugs, alcohol. So there were 28,000 events last year that involved drugs, alcohol, or tobacco. And this is broken down by race, but again, it's a fitting shape of a graph to our normal population. Next slide, please. So males were more likely than females to have referrals for drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. Next slide, please. So this is by grade level. So students that were found to be in possession or in use of drugs, alcohol, tobacco in schools. You know, and so that very bottom line of that graph shows that every grade level had at least one incident where a student was found in possession of one of these items. But again, we see a peak in 8th, 9th, and 10th grade as compared to the rest. Next slide, please. Okay. Socioeconomic status, again, we see a discrepancy where students that qualify for free reduced lunch are responsible at a much higher rate than students that qualify for paid lunch. Next slide, please. So this is broken down by the type of drug that was found on the student. And so alcohol is all the way to the left, making 500 appearances. We see marijuana, 2/3 to the right there, and over 7,000 events. And then nicotine at 19,000. So of the 28,000 events or behavior events last year, nicotine made up 19,000, marijuana 7,000, alcohol 500. Of those nicotine events, so nicotine vapor products, so in Infant Campus, if the administrator took the time to select the right boxes, nicotine vapor products accounted for 14,000 of those reported events, and THC vapor products were cited 4,000 times or 4,400 times out of that 7,000. So that's where we're seeing, that's where schools are seeing the issue is with vapor devices more so than old school or analog cigarettes or marijuana in the form of a non-vapor device. All right, next slide, please. Okay. Bullying, harassment. I really loved how you all touched on this earlier with Dr. Sweeney. And something that for me stood out. So one of the things I train on is sources of strength. So Justin in Lyon County had shared that earlier. Sources of strength is one of the greatest things that my branch provides to schools is training so that they can take that on in their school. It's a free training. It's something that involves all students with a focus of mental health supports and destigmatizing, getting help for mental health. But it also focuses on suicide prevention. But it has an impact on the culture of a school and acceptance and support offered from peer to peer. So I'm going to make a pitch. If you are connected to your school counselor or family resource center, and they're looking for any ideas to help the student body of the school that you're in, Sources of Strength is an absolute fantastic training and program. And you can feel free to contact me if you want more information on that. But with that said, bullying harassment affects everybody in the building. So while we saw it happen 18,000 times last year, you have to at least double the amount of victims. So either the victim, which is at least 18,000, the peer bystanders, the people that stood around and watched it happen. You're going to multiply by that, and then the actual bully himself, like him or herself, as Dr. Sweeney said, they're impacted by this behavior. So there's no innocent bystander when it comes to bullying. Everybody is negatively impacted. So for me, this hits home because it has to be multiplied so much more to really measure the impact in a school. But with that said, this is broken down by race. If you can go to the next slide, please. So we see males getting referrals at a much higher rate than females, so almost twice time. And I'm going to expose my bias here, and I don't know if this is true or not, and more research would have to be done, but I would expect that it happens at a pretty similar rate based on other surveys that we do. When students self-report bullying, we see a very similar rate between females and males as self-reporting as having a bullying either incident as a victim or as an offender in the past. And so I would say that when males bully, they maybe are a little more overt or more open about it. Maybe it's physical, where females might bully in a way that is more easily not seen by a school teacher or personnel. And so they may be getting away with it at a higher rate, just because it's not something that is as easily noticed. But males have a much more highly chance of being written up for bullying harassment than females. Okay, next slide, please. As we've seen before, so bullying takes place across the board, but really the highest rates shift down a little bit, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, more so than high school. Next slide. Again, we see a higher rate of students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, having a higher chance of having a referral for bullying harassment. Next slide. You can skip this one, go to the next slide. Got to make up for some time here. This is a count of legal sanctions. So after a student has a disciplinary infraction, the administrator may, suspend or apply some type of school consequence. But if there is an arrest or charges filed or just SRO involvement, there's a box to check in Infinite Campus that would account for those things. And so, we see these things all happen at a pretty level rate over the last couple of years. I will say that this is an optional box that administrators kind of need to go back and check, and I think they don't always do that because I know school resource officers are involved a lot more often than 5,000 times last year. So for me, that's something that when I train administrators, I really emphasize and try and get them to put this data in more accurately because it helps us all to see a more clear picture. All right, next slide, please. All right, so this is a quick summary of this information, and I know our time is almost up. But of the 280,000 behavior events that were reported, about 20% were those big events that we have to report. Black students are overrepresented in behavior events, so they make up almost 32% of behavior incidents, while only representing 10% or 10.8% of the student population. Male students are twice as likely to have a referral than female students. Next slide, please. Students from lower socioeconomic status are more likely to be in Infinite Campus with a behavior event. The rate of students with a gun or other deadly weapon has doubled in the past 5 years. So from 2018 to 2023, it's doubled in the amount. Female involvement in drugs, alcohol, and tobacco has doubled in the past 5 years. So that's not something I highlighted when we talked about it. But while male involvement in drugs, alcohol, tobacco has kind of remained stable, we've seen a big increase in females. And vape usage, to no surprise of anybody on this call, has really climbed over the past 5 years in our schools. Okay. Dr. Grider-Jones, in terms of time-wise, do we need to cut it off here?
No, I was going to say, please take the time to invite conversation or what you had planned. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. So yeah, I know that was a lot just all dumped at you real quick. There's just a couple follow-ups I would like to have with you all, and feel free to share in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and say something, I would love to hear input. So as I move forward in this position, we are looking at kind of maybe revamping some of this data so it's a little more accurate in terms of, not accurate, but it highlights the things that need to be highlighted. Right now, it checks the boxes of requirement, but I think there's ways that we can present this data to be more informative. And so I would love for input from you all, from me, what that might look like, or just what you'd like to see from this data. So if there's questions that you have, like, hey, what does this look like? Or how would we ever look at this? Feel free to share that. But I would like to just ask the question, who influences the data that we just looked at? So who touches the data that before it gets to us? Give me some ideas. Okay, district dependent. Okay, I'm just looking for groups. So like, what populations in our school systems would influence this data or be involved in this data? Our counselors. Okay, yeah, sounds great.
I could say at our school, our teachers are.
Absolutely, teachers, yes. All right. Kevin said administrators, yes. Teachers or just people making referrals in the chat? Sorry.
Like the administrators filing the certain infractions that are made, like how specific events are reported. It might depend on how they view the incident.
Absolutely, that's a great point. So you've introduced the idea of bias in there, right? So certain things that take place that some administrators might say, that's just boys being boys. They weren't really bullying, for example. But yeah, that's a great point. School resource officers, Ava said, thank you. Okay. Yeah, so depending on school level, district level policy, you could see SROs, administrators, counselors, or educators. Thank you, Nicholas. All right. So let me ask you this then. So if those people are all involved, before we get to the final product of data, the data does not tell us why any of these things are happening. All it does, it tells us these things happened. This was the consequence or the result. And then there's a huge gap there of what power do we have to influence that? And so I think all the people that you mentioned are involved in some way, or they help shape this data. So for me as an employee of the Department of Education, I look for opportunity to provide support, provide training, or just guidance on how we can improve this data. And the data isn't that important. It's the people behind the data. So it's the end result, the students that are sitting in classrooms, the teachers that are in classrooms experiencing that those negative behaviors. So what can we do? I'll say specifically for some of those areas of disproportionality. What are some of the trainings, or who is it that we need to influence? So I won't say specific trainings. Who do we need to influence to change the outcome for our students?
Seth has. Seth?
Oh yeah, hand up. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. I know from growing up in an impoverished area, there are really high crime rates there. I know a lot of kids there, and it's really hard for them to focus in school and feel like they have a chance to go anywhere when they're not being motivated, and it leads to more crime. They're not motivated to try harder. I feel like if we were to really make students see that no matter your current situation, it can always improve, and that there's a path forward, it would really help.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Seth.
I would kind of second that, and talking a little bit more about teachers wise. At my school, more and more of the disciplinary responsibility is on teachers, which for them is another responsibility that is a part of their time, and influencing the teachers as the kind of base level for where you said that most of these incidents are occurring in classrooms, and most of our time is spent in classrooms. The teachers are the ones who see us the most and probably have the most influence over our behavior and over the reporting. So I would say teachers are the group to influence most.
Yeah. Do you think, a follow-up question to that, do you think that teachers have the ability to change the behavior of students?
I would say yes to a certain degree. So I would say that within the school, especially in comparison to other personnel in the school, teachers have the highest ceiling to influence student behavior because of the time spent with them. That was my argument as a student, is that I spend the most time with teachers and in the classroom. And while I do see administrators, and administrators are ultimately the ones who are responsible for those higher level resolutions, the teachers are the ones who have the greatest ceiling and ability to influence. Now, how to do that, I think it's more complicated, but that's my follow-up answer.
Yeah, I love that response of just the highest ceiling with the most power to influence. Absolutely. And for example, I mean, if you've ever seen a student that maybe misbehaves in one classroom and then they get to another classroom with a very similar student grouping, but you see a different teacher and you see that the kids just all of a sudden rise up to the expectations or a different behavior level than with a different teacher. You can see that teachers have the ability to create that in their classrooms. But I think you hit another great point of with all the other responsibilities, it's a challenge. Okay.
I do think, speaking to Peter's point, if teachers, because teachers are obviously the ones who see this the most, I think teachers should learn what unconscious bias is. And they should learn that when disciplining their students, whether they realize it or not, they could be having bias that is affecting the disciplinary decisions of the said student interactions.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we can't discount conscious or unconscious biases that we all have. I think someone in the chat said, getting families involved is a huge component to student success. Great. So Seth said that students often feel like they're not being supported when they ask for help. They're not being taken seriously, and they're told they're overreacting. Gosh, yeah, mental health is so important here too. Yeah, those are excellent points. And then someone's got a hand up, and I can't quite see who that is.
Yes, it's me, Nicholas. I had in a way, when you ask about who has a role, I do think with the addition of SROs to virtually nearly every district in the state, they add a new component, just like police officers would in the community. They hold that role to an extent. And I think there were certain trainings I know that they, have to go through, as well as their background. In many people that we have in our district, used to work in the federal system or used to have that criminal background to where they understand, how to do these things. But I think when they go from an environment of community policing or incarceration or something like that, that is a very, not brutal, but a rough background to then convert into a school environment.
Absolutely.
And I think when you consider that, I think there should be, whether it is already or if it needs to be added, there should be certain de-escalation and certain mental and emotional considerations that you even though you should, probably aren't considered in those previous environments they've probably been exposed to, whether military service or, what have you.
All right. Nick, thank you very much. And I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to read the question here, and then I'm going to end my time because I've got to get going for your sake. But Nick, yeah, so Kentucky actually has one of the highest levels of trainings required for school resource officers. So to even be considered a school resource officer, officers must go through 40 hours of SRO training, and that's conducted through the Kentucky Center for School Safety. They offer that every year, every summer. So it's a 40-hour training, which seems like a lot, but it's more is always better. Like you said, they're coming. Policing on the street is much different than policing in schools, and de-escalation is part of that training. And there's a follow-up, a second tier for another 40 hours that officers go to in their second year. And we're one of the states that has the highest threshold or requirements for SRO training, but more is always better. And Justin had a question: is there data to show how many of these students are repeat offenders? And yeah, there is, and something like 80% of those 92,000 students that have referrals, somewhere around 80% had just one referral, and about 12,000 had multiple referrals. So that's a great question. So yeah, we do see that when we break it down into repeat offenders, that population does get smaller, a much smaller grouping than the entire 92,000. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. Really appreciated your time, your discussion. It helps me to think about these things as I move forward. And again, I'm going to make a push. Sources of strength. If you all don't have it in your school, talk to Justin about it. I love that he shared how much of the impact it's made, and something that myself, my coworkers, and other trainers can come to your school and provide for absolutely no cost to get you up and running. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Blake, for sharing the data, the highlights, and to everyone contributing to the conversation. This was informative for me to hear and learn more about the information and how it's collected, and then some really great questions in the chat. So thank you to Blake, you and your team, for joining us today and sharing out that information. At this time, we have queued up next Rima and Bentley, Rima Dutt, the chair of the Commissioner Student Advisory Council, and Bentley White, your vice chair of the council, who will be sharing an update about the current status of the Student Advisories Council project related to student voice. And then also we will be breaking out into virtual breakout rooms and as part of an activity related to your student voice project. So Rima and Bentley, are you both ready to lead us in the update?
Yes, I can. Okay, so basically for our next steps with this project, with the next 30 minutes we have on this call, we will be going over the transcripts from the January meeting, and we'll be splitting into 2 groups. And essentially we're going to be, these are like 7-8 page long transcripts. So obviously in our actual report, we can't quote the whole thing. So the idea of today's meeting time is to split into these groups and go through the transcripts and pull out and highlight quotes that 1 or 2 sentences quotes from the people we interviewed to use in our report, if that makes sense. So making sure that we go through and just really find the areas that we want to share and that are really valuable to student voice in the conversation. And then for a bit of an overview of our project's plan for the next couple of next couple months, our goal is to present the work in our final report in the April meeting, and that will be in person April 24th. And we haven't finalized who we're presenting it to yet, but it'll most likely be the media and there'll be news channels there. But in the meantime, it's currently February, so we're going to have asynchronous work that we will be sending out after this call to start writing up the report, and it'll be organized, and just be on the look out for your emails. But the goal is by the March meeting, to have a rough draft of the report finalized, so we can go through and practice our speaking parts for the April meeting. But that's just a general overview. And I actually don't have my laptop right now because I'm on the go a little bit. So I'm gonna have Bentley take over now.
Hi, folks. So basically what I'll be doing right now is dropping links. So the first thing that I'm dropping into the chat is for the Google Drive folder with all of our like transcripts and recordings and notes. We may not have the notes in there quite yet, but we will work on that. And then I'm dropping the now I just dropped that. Now I'm dropping the group doc. Let me change the access on this. Yes. Okay. This is the general outline of the project and what we will be doing, like where we need to basically just what the document that our final document will be looking like. And then finally, I will now drop our grouping assignments. Now, if these are wrong, you can let one of us know. But if I remember correctly, these are all the right groups. We'll give you all a second to review these documents, and then from there, I think we will go into our breakout groups.
So I think to quickly recap, Bentley has dropped several documents in the chat. If anyone is having access issues, please let me know. These should be viewable and available to everyone on the call. And you should be seeing, I think, the overview for the student voice presentation, as well as the folder Bentley mentioned that has the items from the transcripts from your last meeting, where you all broke out into 4 different groups and interviewed some members of other advisory councils. And Bentley and Rima, please let me know when you're ready, and I will move everyone. You'll be sorted automatically into one of 2 breakout rooms. So just let me know when we're ready to move into that breakout room.
I think we're ready, unless Rima has anything else she wants to say. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. And then while we're in those groups, we will, I feel from my understanding, the way we've decided is we won't be well, we will, but we also won't be only focusing on the transcript that like your group did. He will be focusing on transcripts that other groups did. So if you're trying to give it a fresh set of eyes, if you could. So while we're there, we're gonna just basically just review everything. You good to go?
And to put a time limit, we will pull back into the sort of main virtual meeting space and share out to the larger group. Rima, Bentley, it's 11:05. Sound comfortable?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
All right. So everyone, you'll be moving into one of 2 virtual rooms and to review the documents that Bentley's just mentioned. So stand by for the magical sorting. All right, welcome back to the main virtual meeting space. I believe everyone has come back to the main area. Rima and Bentley, would you like to share an update about what happened in the virtual space and then what the council may expect between now and the next meeting?
Yeah, so in the virtual space, again, we just like went over and I was looking at the document on my phone and like everyone was highlighting like really like key quotes to pull out. And for the next steps, again, just like be on the lookout for your email because we will like be splitting up in like asynchronous groups to get a rough draft of the report done by the March meeting. So we have around a month and it's going to be like very doable asynchronous task. It's not going to be like super strenuous and like, yeah, but Bentley, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, so basically our group pretty much did the same thing. We kind of like worked independently. It was kind of quiet, but we got work done. So we basically just went through the transcripts and highlighted what we felt was important. And we basically kind of did that so that we could get a feel for how we would work best, I think. And so we decided that we will work asynchronously on both the transcripts and the outline. So basically like still going through the transcripts to determine like what we felt was important so that way we can put those in the outline while also working on the outline of the document and just getting work done before. So we haven't really determined a deadline for anything yet, but I think we may end up establishing we need to have these transcripts, like feedback on them determined by this date. So just keep an eye out for that.
Sounds great. Sounds like a good working activity for both sets of groups. And as Bentley, I heard Bentley say, please be on the lookout for continued updates to your email about the project. And at this time, I think we will move forward for our portion of the meeting reserved for updates that might be useful or beneficial to you and or your high school classmates, and then an opportunity to provide space for the members to share announcements that may be beneficial for the larger group for the Commissioner Student Advisory Council. And I have one update. Friday, March 1 is the deadline for applications for the Commissioner Student Advisory Council. You all currently on the council were offered a meeting link, an opportunity to renew your membership if you are eligible to continue service on the council. But we also wanted to remind you that the applications for other members are currently being accepted through March 1. To be eligible, Kentucky high school students must be in grades 9 through 11 at the time of application. And the link for additional information about the application details and process are available on our Kentucky Teacher, which is linked on this slide, which will be provided. And again, if you are interested in renewing your membership, you have received the renewal form with that information. Just wanted to be mindful of the Friday deadline in case you have the opportunity to promote and share widely to your networks. And so now I will pause here for the opportunity for space for you, the members, to share some updates, again, that might be beneficial for the larger group. And this may include upcoming events or activities. And feel free to use the chat as well as unmute, excuse me. And I see Seth and then Nicholas.
This is a question more than an announcement. I was wondering if I could be added to the group me. I was told there was a group me and I'm not included on it.
Yes, we will look into that for sure. If anyone else is also not included on the group me and would like to be, feel free to drop that in the chat or send me an email as well. Thank you, Seth. Nicholas.
Yes, I just wanted to kind of recap last Friday. I was glad and honored to host Kevin Daly at Paintsville. And he's a wealth of knowledge and a great gift to any of your districts. So if any of you are interested in letting him, tour your district, your school, and meet with a teacher of your choice that you believe deserves some kind of recognition or any kind of festivity, his email with the department is kevin.daly@education.ky.gov. And also next, this Saturday, March the 2nd, I will be in Hazard for a community forum from 2:30 to 4:45 concerning, sorry, that's the intercom, going over education and how we best in the Commonwealth can serve our students. It'll be at the Appalachian Arts Alliance building in Hazard. So if any of you would like to come, I can send you more information on that, but that's all I have.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Thanks for the shout out, Nick. Hey, I do want to throw this out there just because it's very apropos. I'm sorry to cut in line, but of what Nick just said. On the March 26th through March 28th, I'm currently trying to plan a trip to the southeast, south central region of Kentucky, so around London area. So if you're in that area and you're like, hey, Mr. Daly, Kevin, I want you to stop by and see this awesome teacher. Please, please, please email me, because as I put this trip together within the next week or so, I try to visit, it's going to be 3 days or really like 2.5 days. And I'll try to visit like 6 different classrooms. So, or 6 different schools if possible. So they kind of have to be clustered, but please, 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 please send in those recommendation forms to me. I'll put the recommendation form in the chat if you want to like clip it and save it just in case. And yeah, again, I put this in the chat earlier, but I was able to go and see a bunch of schools. I was in Pikeville Independent, Knott County, Owsley County, Paintsville, Johnson County this past week, and it was awesome. And I would love to get into your all schools if you're in those areas. So yeah, I'll put that link in the chat. Sorry for interrupting or like skipping line. It was relevant.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And I also included Kevin's email directly in the chat as well, if you would like to connect with him directly. And are there any other announcements at this time? All right, well, hearing none, and Kevin, looks like Kevin has dropped in the chat the referral recommendation form. I do want to announce that the next meeting date for the Commissioner Student Advisory Council is going to be Tuesday, March 26th. However, please note, or importantly, please note that there is a time change from 9 a.m. The meeting will now be in the afternoon from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So that is a different start time than we have typically been meeting. Again, the next meeting date is March 26th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be virtual, and you should have received a new link for that meeting that came directly from me. And that concludes
Sorry, Dr. Jones.
Yes.
Can I throw one? I'm going to throw one more link in there for you guys, just because, especially Nicholas and Hunter, because I came to your schools. But I just put another link into the chat. This is the website that I'm using to house all of the Imperfect Classroom stuff. It's still in progress, guys. Don't judge me too hard. I know you guys are better at technology than I'll ever be already, but if there's any feedback that you want to give to me on there, I don't have all of these things written up yet. So my next one is not County Hunter, just so you know. But I'm working through them as quickly as I can. But if you want to check them out, they're there. If you want to share them along, throw them to whoever you want to throw them to. I'd love for people to navigate there. So sorry, last thing. I'm done. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. That concludes, I think, all of our announcements. A lot of information today in today's meeting, updates about the Safe Schools Statistical Report, as well as our session with Dr. Damian Sweeney. Please be on the lookout in your email for the exit slip for those interested in Dr. Brewer's opportunity related to the Student Advisory Special Committee to review applications for the student member of the Kentucky Board of Education. That will be provided in the exit slip. So lots of information. It was really wonderful to see everyone today, and hope you all have a great rest of the day. See you at our March meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.